So last week I did a video ranking every undefeated team, and there were 32 of them. After this weekend of college football, we are now just down to 21 unbeaten schools. In today's video, we're going to do a part 2 and rank all the unbeaten teams left. After some confusion last week, I'm going to come out and clarify that this is actually my power rankings, and it's a combination of who would win head-to-head and body of work so far. We got a lot of teams to rank, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. At number 21, we have the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. Coastal has been a popular team over the last 2 years, and they're once again off to another great start in 2022. Led by their star quarterback Grayson McCall, they have defeated Army, Gardner-Webb, Buffalo, and Georgia State. None of them have been in blowout fashion. I'm not really sure what to think of this team. They haven't really blown anyone out, but they also haven't lost. We're not going to find out a whole lot until the end of the season, as they'll get Marshall, App State, Virginia, and James Madison, and those should be some fun matchups at the end of the year. For now, Coastal is the worst unbeaten. Up next, we have UCLA. Led by the 1-2 punch of DTR and Zach Charbonnet, the Bruins have gotten off to a great start. They're currently 4-0 with wins over Bowling Green, Alabama State, South Alabama, and Colorado, and this schedule has been extremely easy. I think the Bruins have potential to be at the top of the Pac-12, but they haven't beaten anyone. We will find out very shortly, as they have Washington, Utah, and Oregon in their next 3 games, and that's 3 straight games against top 15 opponents. Let's see how the Bruins do. We now go over to the Big 12, as we're going to talk about the TCU Horned Frogs. In week 1, they went on the road and defeated Colorado 38-13, and then they took care of Tarleton State. This past weekend, they played their arch rival SMU and won in close fashion. They beat the Ponies 42-34 to get to 3-0 in year 1 under Sonny Dykes. I don't think the Horned Frogs are a national title contender, but I also think they are pretty good. They get to host number 18 Oklahoma this upcoming weekend, and I have the Sooners on upset watch once again. After the Frogs, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. There might be some complaints down in the comment section, but the number 14 ranked team is nowhere near the 14th best team in college football. In week 1, they took care of Troy, in week 2, they took care of Central Arkansas, and then in week 3, they blanked Georgia Tech. This past weekend, they struggled to put away Tulsa, and despite giving them chance after chance, they came away with a win. While the Rebels are 4-0, they really have not impressed me. Compared to other schools, Ole Miss hasn't really done anything. I do think they are a good team though. We're going to find out everything we need to know this weekend against Kentucky as the number 7 Wildcats come to town, and if Ole Miss wins this game, they're going to move up a lot next week. Up next, we have the James Madison Dukes. They have made quite a statement in their first year in the FBS, as in their first game, they took care of Middle Tennessee 44-7. On paper, that doesn't look like a great win, but did you guys just catch what happened this weekend? Middle Tennessee went to Miami and pushed around the Hurricanes, so all of a sudden that win over Middle Tennessee State looks pretty good. They also blew the rails off of Norfolk State in week 2, and then this past weekend they had a miraculous comeback where they went and beat Appalachian State on the road. App State's beat A&M, they almost beat North Carolina, and the Mountaineers are a solid team. For what it's worth, James Madison has done terrific with their schedule, and later on they have games against Louisville and Coastal Carolina, so we'll see if they can be a 10-plus win team. We go back over to the ACC, as we're now going to talk about the Syracuse Orange. They've been a pleasant surprise this year in college football, and when Dino Babers needed a good season, his team delivered for him. In week 1, they destroyed Louisville, and then they went on the road and blew out UConn in week 2. In week 3, they had a miraculous finish to beat Purdue, and then this past Friday, they beat Virginia 22-20. While they did not win in outstanding fashion, the W is all that matters, and they are now 2-0 in the conference with a 4-0 record, and they have 3 Power 5 wins. Syracuse gets a game against Wagner before they'll play 5 ranked teams in 6 weeks. We're going to find out what Syracuse is made of, and if this is another 2018 season all over again. The only reason I would put Oklahoma State ahead of Syracuse is because I would pick the Cowboys to win head-to-head. Oklahoma State's a lot like Ole Miss in my eyes, where they are ranked high but haven't really done anything to earn it. They beat Central Michigan in week 1 and did take care of Arizona State in week 2, but the Sun Devils are one of the most dysfunctional Power 5 programs at the moment, and that game was close well into the second half. The Cowboys also beat Arkansas Pine Bluff, and really none of those 3 games stand out to me. Spencer Sanders looks like he's having his best year, and I do think Oklahoma State is definitely a Big 12 title contender. We're going to find out a lot this upcoming weekend as they're going to go on the road to Baylor. Just like Oklahoma State and Ole Miss, Kentucky's kind of in a similar boat for me. While the Cats are currently the 7th ranked team in the country, they haven't really impressed me that much. They beat Miami of Ohio in week 1, Youngstown State in week 3, and Northern Illinois in week 4, but none of those 3 teams are really worth talking about. The one win that does separate Kentucky from the rest of the pack so far, though, is their road victory over number 12 Florida. They won that game 26-16, and I was impressed with Kentucky in that game. Will Levis obviously has been good, but I think he has to take his play to a whole nother level if Kentucky wants a legitimate shot to play in the SEC title game. They also have to get that running game going. I think Kentucky's a better team than where they're ranked right now, but they're going to have to show it. They go on the road to Ole Miss this weekend, and we're going to find out a lot. At number 13, we have the Minnesota Golden Gophers. PJ Fleck has been hyped up for the last few years, but the 2020 and 2021 seasons were sort of disappointing. It looks like the Gophers are back to their 2019 form, as they're currently ranked number 21 in the country and have a 4-0 record, with wins over New Mexico State, Western Illinois, and Colorado. None of those three games really impressed me, but this past weekend, they showed me that they may be legitimate. They showed me that not only they are legitimate, but could be the favorite in the Big Ten West now. They went on the road to Michigan State and won 34-7. It honestly should have been worse. Minnesota left a couple of points on the field, and Michigan State had a late garbage time touchdown. Does this say more about how good Minnesota is or how bad Michigan State is? That I can't answer, but as of right now, Minnesota looks pretty good, and if they can survive against Purdue and Illinois, they'll have another undefeated showdown with Penn State, just like back in 2019. Up next, we have NC State. The ACC Atlantic Division is loaded as they currently have 4 undefeated teams. So far, NC State is 4-0 after they survived a trap game against East Carolina, destroyed Charleston Southern, defeated UConn, and then had a good win over Texas Tech in Week 3. The only knock I have on NC State so far is that they should have beaten East Carolina by more, and I would also like to see Devin Leary play better. I think he has unlimited potential, and he's going to have to put that on full display this weekend as they'll go on the road to number 5 Clemson with College game day there. If NC State wants to get over the hump and win an ACC title, they're going to have to get through Clemson, and they also have games against Florida State and Syracuse coming up, so we're going to find out a lot in these next 3 weeks. Speaking of the ACC Atlantic Division, Florida State has been a pleasant surprise. In year 3 under Mike Norvell, the Seminoles have taken a step forward. They beat Duquesne in Week 0, had that miracle finish to beat LSU, and then in Week 3 went on the road and beat Louisville. I was personally at that game, and despite them having a backup quarterback, Florida State did well. Johnny Wilson is a superhuman receiver, and combining that with a balanced ground game and an experienced quarterback in Jordan Travis, Florida State could be really good this year. This past weekend, they beat Boston College pretty badly, and just like a lot of other teams, we're going to find out a lot in the next 3 weeks. They play Wake Forest for a road trip to NC State and a home return against Clemson. This division is absolutely loaded, and I cannot wait to watch all these games. We now crack the top 10 as we're going to talk about Penn State. In Week 1, Penn State had an underrated victory as they went on the road and defeated Purdue 35-31. In Week 2, they came home and beat Ohio for a trip to Auburn in which they killed the Tigers. They beat Auburn 41-12, and this was an embarrassing loss for Auburn. This past weekend, they struggled to put away Central Michigan, but they now advanced to 4-0. Sean Clifford looks a lot better this season, and overall, this team just looks a lot better. This upcoming weekend, they're going to play Northwestern, and I pretty much assume they're going to survive that. After a bye week, they'll go on the road to number 4 Michigan, and this has serious Big Ten title implications. Will Penn State get over the hump, or will they lose again? At number 9, I have the Washington Huskies. After a disastrous 2-year stretch under Jimmy Lake, the Huskies moved forward with Fresno State coach Kalen DeBoer, and it has paid off immediately. DeBoer grabbed his old quarterback from Indiana in Michael Penix Jr., and so far, this team has gone nuts. They destroyed Kent State in Week 1, killed Portland State in Week 2, before they had a statement game against Michigan State. They beat the number 11 Spartans pretty badly, and despite them falling apart late, it was a huge win for them. This past weekend, they beat Stanford 40-22, and this Washington team looks solid and could have a real chance at a Pac-12 title at this point. Michael Penix has the most passing yards in college football, and he is just flat out dominating right now. I love this Washington team, and I think the sky is the limit for them. I know some people won't like this pick, but how can you not have Kansas as a top 10 team right now? Put aside the brand prestige and just take a look at what the Jayhawks have done. In Week 1, they destroyed Tennessee Tech. In Week 2, they went and beat a good West Virginia team on the road. And then in Week 3, they went and beat a good Houston team on the road. That Houston game was never in doubt. And then this past weekend, in a matchup against 3-0 Duke, Jalen Daniels looked terrific, the offense was explosive, and they won the game 35-27. The Jayhawks are 4-0. Jalen Daniels is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. This offense is insane, and they're just overall a good team. There is absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be ranked, and based on what Kansas has done so far, it's hard to say that they don't have a chance at the Big 12 right now. Last week, I got a lot of complaints for not having Michigan higher, And this week, we're going to put them up a little bit more. In week 1, they beat Colorado State. In week 2, they beat Hawaii. And in week 3, they beat UConn. All 3 of those teams are atrocious, but Michigan's offense was extremely explosive in those games. They had their first test this past weekend as an undefeated Maryland team came to town. Michigan ended up winning 34-27, and while the game was closer than many would have liked, Michigan did prove a lot. Blake Corum might be the best running back in college football, and if the passing game can get going a little bit more, Michigan has a legitimate shot at winning the Big Ten as well. This upcoming weekend, they go on the road to Iowa, and if they can beat them and Indiana, they'll be undefeated for that showdown with Penn State. While in my eyes, Michigan hasn't done a lot so far, they are worthy of being the number 7 team in the country in my eyes. At number 6, I have the USC Trojans. With Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison, and Lincoln Riley coming in, the Trojans were going to have a ton of hype. They beat Rice pretty badly, and then week 2, they went on the road and beat Stanford. In week 3, they took care of Fresno State, and then this past weekend, they went on the road and beat Oregon State. They did barely survive this game, but I think Oregon State is definitely a top 25 team, and in my eyes, this was pretty impressive. There were a lot of question marks around USC's defense, and they stopped a really good Oregon State offense and held them to only 14 points. The Trojans are currently 4-0, and this upcoming weekend, they have a game against Arizona State, which I don't think will be difficult. After that, they get both Washington State and Utah, and we're going to find out a lot more about them then. We now get into the top 5, and at number 5, I have the Tennessee Volunteers. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I do believe Tennessee is a top 5 team right now. They have a star quarterback, a great coach, a good group of receivers, some good wins to their name, and a good defense. In week 1, they killed Ball State before they went and had a thrilling win on the road against number 17 Pitt. After that, they came home and dominated Akron, and then this past weekend, they beat number 20 Florida. Despite having a meltdown in the last 3 minutes, Tennessee was the better team all game, and right now, Tennessee has a ton of momentum. They are currently on bye, but after that, they have a road game against LSU before Alabama comes to town. If somehow they can beat LSU, this will be the most anticipated Tennessee-Bama game in years. Right now, this Tennessee team is giving me 2016 vibes, but they have a chance to be better than that. At number 4, we have Clemson. I'll be honest, I was still a little bit skeptical of the Tigers until this past weekend. They beat Georgia Tech in week 1, but that pretty much means nothing right now. In week 2, they beat Furman, and in week 3, they beat Louisiana Tech, but again, those wins don't really mean a whole lot. You're waiting for the coming out party of DJ Uiagalelei, and he did that this past weekend. In a road game against number 21 Wake Forest, DJ threw for 371 yards and 5 touchdowns, including multiple crucial fourth quarter touchdowns, and they beat the Demon Deacons 51-45. This was a very impressive win, and despite having a ton of injuries in the secondary, Clemson found a way to hold on. They're currently 4-0, but things don't get any easier as number 10 NC State comes to town, and then in 2 weeks, they go on the road to number 23 Florida State. Will Clemson be able to survive this schedule, or will they fall? That I cannot answer, but right now, they are looking a little bit better than they did before. Deciding the final 3 was pretty difficult, but in third place, we're going to put Ohio State. In week 1, the Buckeyes obviously beat number 5 Notre Dame, and while I wish the offense was a little bit more explosive, a win is a win. Notre Dame also fell off, but I'm more worried about how Ohio State has played recently. After that, they killed Arkansas State and Toledo at home before they had Wisconsin at home this past weekend. While I'm not super high on Wisconsin this year, they still are a pretty good team, and Ohio State put them back in their place. The Buckeyes won 52-21, and that game was never competitive. I don't know who thought it would be. Ohio State is now 4-0, CJ Stroud looks terrific, and I think they are the best team in the Big Ten. Their next 3 games in my eyes aren't that difficult as they get Rutgers, Michigan State, and Iowa, and I don't believe they're going to trip up on any of those. Ohio State has a real chance at going undefeated this year, but the question is this team good enough to win a title? That I don't know. At number 2, we have Georgia. I originally had them as the number 1 team, but after this weekend's performance, they moved down a spot. In week 1, they beat the brakes off of number 11 Oregon as they won 49-3. Oregon has gotten a lot better over the last 3 weeks, so this win actually looks a lot more impressive now. In week 2, they shut out Samford before they went on the road and destroyed South Carolina. Their first 3 games were terrific, but this past weekend, they showed some weakness. They only beat Kent State 39-22, and this game was close in the third quarter. There's no reason why Georgia should have struggled with Kent State, but I'll cut them some slack and just say they had an off day. Georgia right now is 4-0, and luckily they get the 3 worst teams in the SEC next. So Georgia should be 7-0 for their game against Florida. Finally, we get to number 1, and that is Alabama. So far, the Tide have 1 good win, and then 3 absolutely dominating performances. They shut out Utah State 55-0, killed Yoel Monroe 63-7, and then this past weekend destroyed Vanderbilt 55-3. In week 2, they went on the road and beat Texas, and it wasn't their best win by any means, but Bryce Young found a way to win the game and make plays when it mattered most. The Tide are 4-0, but things don't get any easier for them. They play 4 ranked teams in the next 6 weeks, and 3 of those are on the road. I have this weird gut feeling that they're going to lose one of them, but for now, the Crimson Tide are the top team in the country, and it's going to take a lot to dethrone them. But what do you guys think? What did I get right and wrong in this video? Which undefeated team will lose next? And who is the best one-loss school? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.